I was just this kid who was in Mombasa. I learned how to draw a long time ago because I really love graphic novels and comic books. So I taught myself how to draw from that. I think I was getting into too much trouble, so my mom, straight after school, brought me here to do something vocational at Ogilvy. For some reason, I was taken to media. I worked with Lenny, George Luta, Marianne Kirubi, and Khadija Walwa. That was a media department then. It was that few people. So I was taught how to do media bookings, tracking and stuff. Like, it might seem fairly mundane, but it came in very handy later. In between, now when I was chilling with Lenny, whatever, on our lunch breaks and stuff, I used to doodle and draw things. I did media for a while, and then there was a shortage of creatives. These guys who draw, there were no visualizers, that's what we used to call them. Because those days there were no computers. Computer was a big drawing board. And with these a 3 or a 2 drawing pads, and you had magic markers, and Rod Granger approached me to some random lunchtime. He's like, can you draw? I was like, yeah. It's like, do you want to stay on this side and do boring stuff, or come to this side? Because one wing was client service and the other wing was creative. Or come to this other wing where all the cool people are. And I was like, I have a feeling it might have been Lenny who told Rod, because it wasn't by chance that he came to look for me. Everything that you ever did was by hand. So if there's a mistake, you have to start again. And again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And it's why I credit that phase to me being a perfectionist about what I do now. Because I learned it from then that you can't let a small mistake slide. After that, because I wasn't satisfied with just being the visualizer to go to, because suddenly I started getting all these briefs and I was like, dope. I did well enough, I guess, to get promoted. And that's how it started. Typography then was still dodgy because the fonts were not canned properly. And there was a lot of resistance towards using comps, because there are these purists that insisted that type has to be handcrafted. Finishing artists changed from doing stuff with bromides and letraset to now they brought the first Mac Mini, and it was puzzling to other people, but we were like, oh, this is cool, because we were younger. I made it my business to figure out how this thing worked, because I'm glad I did. If I hadn't, I would never have evolved. So what happened was, because of businesses growing, clients became more demanding. Computers evolved too. Then the Mac Quadras came in. You could do graphics, you could retouch pictures, you could do Photoshop, you could scan images. It was a very interesting transition because I literally saw people lose jobs. The paste up guy, 3 computers replaced these 5 or 6 people. There is a Kenchik campaign I did with Eric Ndavi. That was absolutely brilliant because we went to SA, we worked first hand with these colorists, because then we started getting exposed to different things, going to another country and you can see, wow, this is what happens. There was a Barclays robot, which I was a junior director with Cliff, and we designed that thing together. Went, did comic books, did all this, like, I think 14 different visions of how the character will be. So that was a very fulfilling thing to be part of. It was totally dope. And again, working with all these guys, it was ridiculously awesome. They changed how people looked at me, and people were like, wow, so you can actually do this. And of course, I did some print as well that also got noticed. The Choices campaign, the one ad got me a Grand Prix, which was ridiculously cool. A bloody Grand Prix, man. I was like, wow, it got best photography. Yeah, those were interesting times. Every agency had like a culture and a toolkit. Of course, you'll be shown this work, like, yeah, these are the best ads that were done by David Ogilvy. And there was a particular style that Ogilvy had, long copy ads, typical headline, visual copy, or headline, long copy. So there was a number of components that we had to deal with. For the longest time, that's how all the ads look like. So by the time now, when we did that Choices ad, it flipped that theory around, because the headline was not a separate entity, it was part of the visual. The only thing that was extant was the logo. But that in itself kind of made me realize, you know what? what I've known all these years, had I known how to do this, I wish I'd started doing this earlier. And it changed the way I started doing ads. So the whole concept of less is more started with that campaign. So I was at Ogilvy for a while and I was feeling restless. And so I was poached to go to Macan. I ended up at Macan with Kilimo. That was the end of my partnership with Eric. And so when I went to Macan, one day some guy from head office, this was on a random Thursday, and this is bizarre, but you won't believe this. This guy comes and it's like, well, guys, I have some good news and bad news. And this is in the boardroom. I was like, whoa, this is not good. And he said, some of you will not have jobs by today evening, and some of you will. Because of issues or blah, 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 the agency has been bought by Scanad. Is this your computer? I was like, yeah. It's like, you take that, go to Chancery. So in the space of a day, I woke up to go to work at Macan, in Brookside Drive, and I end up in Valley Road, in a different office. It's how I ended up in Scanad, and I had a fantastic run there with Teddy. He's a fantastic writer. Teddy has an amazing way of looking at things. He thinks visually like an art director as well. It was just interesting that we met when I had discovered the less is more principle, because Teddy was more or less the same like me. The less things that we had, the clearer the communication will be. And so that was, again, a learning process and a growing process. I had grown at that point where it was not about just looking for fun briefs. Even things that are purely functional, like the PSI work, which was to help people get over the HIV stigma and stuff like that, that was very fulfilling to work on, knowing that you are going to change people's lives with the communication that you do. Of course, Scanad was way stricter. People used to call it a sweatshop. There's no experience which is a bad experience. You learn how to work under pressure, and if there's any place where I learned to work under pressure, was there, because it was very demanding. Boy, did they bring it by the tons. I credit that pressure for growing me, to learn how to stand up for myself and for my work. And if you value your work, you have to fight for it. Apparently, to work in advertising, it was like what Hollywood was. If you've seen that series Mad Men, it really was like that. So I'm not sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but let's just say I learned a lot. It was actually 10 times worse than it was now. I mean, now it's relatively tame.